Hi guys, so today's video is going to be another funny 1-star reviews, and for those of you who have never seen this series on my channel, it's where I take a very well-loved popular book or series and then I find the people that hate it with a passion and whose reviews I find amusing in some way, and then I read them to you. The book that I have chosen today would be The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan. This is the first book in the Wheel of Time series, and this first book follows our main three characters of Perrin, Matt, and our main character, Rand. It is a chosen one story, and it takes place in a world where magic used to be accessible to both men and women, but now the magic that men can tap into has been tainted, and any man who has the ability to tap into this magic and uses it will eventually go insane. Despite this fact, the prophecies all say that the person who is going to save the world from the ultimate evil is going to be a man who has the ability to use magic, and it is often considered one of the greatest fantasy books of all time, greatest fantasy series, often on lists of fantasy books that you have to read in your lifetime. But we're gonna read some reviews from some people today that would definitely disagree. Just a heads up, none of these are going to give away any spoilers, so if you haven't read the book, you can still listen to these, and also sometimes I'm going to be reading snippets of reviews and not the reviews in their entirety. Getting into it, the very first one says, "The Eye of the World is a more accessible version of Tolkien, but Tolkien is already a simplified version of the Norse sagas, meaning that Jordan felt a need to dumb down the accessible." The next one says, "Let me preface this by saying very clearly that I mean no offense to the Wheel of Time fans. It's just my opinion, yes? Just my humble opinion. So, simply put, I hate this book." The next one says, "The main character Rand was so uninteresting that I honestly didn't care what happened to him, nor do I have any interest in reading any more books in the series to find out if his story continues. I hope it doesn't. I hope he dies a gruesome and painful death, leaving the entire Wheel of Time world to decay and be overrun by the forces of evil." This next one says, "This is the first time I ever asked Audible for my credit back. Nice service, Audible." The next one says that about 300 pages, I was hoping the Trollocs would catch up with Rand, kill him and all of his friends, and just end it already. This next one has a lot of exclamation points, so I'm going to try to do it justice by having that voice inflection reflect that. It says, "That's it! No more! I am angry at the person who recommended this book to me, a local librarian. How dare this person say that this book is suspenseful and full of wonderful characters? It's boring! Yes, this book is boring, and I don't care how many people out there say it's good, because that is not true. This book is terrible, slow, and boring. I give up. I give up!" The next one says, "Recommended to me by someone whose tastes will forevermore be called into question. This book has an unimaginably tedious pace, a hackneyed plot, and characters so wooden they gave my brain splinters. I managed to force myself through almost 500 pages of this near plagiarized nonsense before I finally admitted defeat. You won this round, Robert Jordan." This next one says, "If you have read Lord of the Rings and want more of the same, go ahead. This is an exact copy. However, if you have read Lord of the Rings and want to keep it as your holy grail for fantasy, avoid this at all costs." This one says, "I read this book years ago and then quickly and thankfully forgot about it. Thought I would give it another try. Bad idea." This one says, "I tried to read this book because all my friends liked it. I hate this book. I really do. I didn't like the characters or the cliched plot. When I was halfway through the novel, I yelled at it and I threw it into the closet after a particularly awful bit of dialogue. 6 months later, I pulled it out of the closet to finish. My wife asked me how I could read something that angered me so much. I said it had become a battle of wills and I wouldn't let the book win. Took another 6 months to finish it at about 10 pages a day. I could read for longer periods only if I occasionally threw the book across the room." Next, this one says, "There are not words to express the depth of my loathing for this purple-prosed, overly long, derivative disaster of a novel, which is basically bad Tolkien fan fiction." The next one says, "The number of times that Tolkien was shamelessly ripped off went into drinking game territory. I'm just mad." This one's entire review is very short and to the point. It says, "People read 14 books of this garbage? Why?" The next one says, "Dear reader, did you ever think, I can't read the Lord of the Rings books. How am I supposed to read a book with good story, likable characters, a vibrant world, and an overall fun experience? That's not possible. If the upper describes you, then look no further. You have found a book with no likable characters, a nonsensical story, and an empty world. The next one says, I finished the first book. It was a very grueling read, unpleasant at times, dense. If anyone out there recommends a book for me that it's as descriptive as this, please tell me so that I can move on to something else. The next one's entire review says, well, that was awful. This next one says, Robert Jordan must think he's writing for an audience of adults. I just cannot continue with a book with this many mundane descriptions, step by step what someone is doing, and sentences like slowly, time slowed. Next, it says, I just could not slog through this tome. Dude loves drapery, but cannot write a female character to save his soul. Buddies assured me once I got to where Sanderson picks up the series that would really improve. Yeah. I wasn't gonna make it that far. The next one says, I wonder how this became a classic. There is not one good thing in it. I won't waste words saying what others already said. I'll just say this. Do you want to read it? Don't. The next one says, after an incredible prologue, the author spends 2 long chapters showing me that life in a rural medieval fantasy world is rural, medieval, and very boring. The next one says, this isn't great fantasy. It's the battle of the sexes played out through Middle-earth. The map even looks like a Middle-earth in shape. The Mountains of Doom? Seriously? Outside of the blatant near plagiarism, one gets tired of the constant female flouncing and man-hating. I haven't figured out if the author hates men and expresses this through his female characters, or if he hates women. The next one says, any actual fans of these books ought to be slapped upside the head and sobered to the reality that they're drenching themselves in the vilest of bilge water reading these books. Here's an excellent motto to live by. Remember, friends don't let friends read Robert Jordan. This one says, the first book is amiable enough, but that's about the best praise I can give it. After that, it's just a mind-numbing funeral dirge. This one says, can someone explain why this book has such high reviews? Talk about herd mentality. The next one says, this book is currently appearing on a popular list of best fantasy novels that's been circulating the net recently. There is no way that someone could have read this book and then sat back and thought, wow, that was some of the best fantasy ever written. No way. Nuh-uh. Clearly the list was compiled by the author's grandmothers. The next one says, it literally took me years to finish this book because I couldn't stand reading more than a page or 2 at a time. So boring, so bland, so contrived and derivative. Eventually, I got sick of it polluting my Kindle, so I just powered through it. Some people have defended this book, saying the billions of sequels that follow create a series worth reading, but if you need 18 sequels to redeem the first book, then that is one seriously terrible book. The next one says, the Dark One is rising. His armies of bestial minions are on the march. Fate selects a handful of country bumpkin homebodies, guided by a powerful mystic mentor and a royal-turned-wandering warrior. They are plagued by nightmares and the Dark One's most powerful servants, and tracked by a creature twisted by desire and evil. This fellowship must journey into the heart of evil to save the world. The Lord of the Rings ensues. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot which book I'd been reading. This book wants to be Lord of the Rings, oh so very desperately. It does everything it can to be Lord of the Rings. Can't imagine why I think this was Lord of the Rings. This last one is my personal favorite. It says, my grandmother always had trouble maintaining a stream of continuity when telling stories. She would begin with some simple event in mind. I ran into that Jones girl today, but in a matter of moments she would be off onto a tributary. You remember her, you went to school with her brother, and each tributary would take off on her own life. He had a teacher who grew the most amazing tomatoes, until it was impossible to find the original thread, let alone bring it to a conclusion. Such is the problem with Robert Jordan. Anyway, that is it for my funny 1-star reviews for The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan. Let me know which one was your favorite. If you love it or if you hate it, let me know. If you thought some were really inaccurate, if you thought some were painfully accurate. But anyway, if you want to see more funny 1-star reviews, I'll go ahead and link my playlist right over here. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you all later. Bye.